So this is part 2 of notes for laws of exponents. These ones are a little bit more complicated, and I want to go through about 3 examples with you guys. So I'm going to say more laws of exponents. Okay, and so these are going to be more examples. So I'm going to just write here a little reminder of our laws of exponents. If I have x to the a times x to the b, where the bases are the same, I am going to have x to the a plus b, where I add those exponents. If I have x to the a raised to the power b, power to power, this is going to be x to the a times b. I'm going to multiply my powers together. If I have x to the a divided by x to the b, I am going to have x to the, and it's going to be the top exponent a minus the bottom exponent b. If I have x to the 0, x to the 0 is going to be 1. If I have x to the negative first power, it is going to be the reciprocal 1 over x. Now, if I had instead 1 over x to the negative 1, where the negative 1 was in the exponent in the denominator, this is actually going to equal x. If I had x to the negative m, this is going to be 1 over, that's what the negative exponent does, it makes it 1 over x to the positive m. And if that x to the negative m was in the denominator, then I'm going to end up getting x to the positive m. The way I think about it is wherever my exponent is negative, we never want negative exponents. We always want positive exponents. So if it's negative here, which would be the numerator, I'm going to move it to the denominator, and now it's positive. If it's negative in the denominator, I'm going to move it to the numerator, and now it's going to be positive up here in the numerator. So let me just go through some examples. Okay, so example 1. Let's say we have 3 x to the negative second, y to the fifth, z to the negative fourth, and let's say that this whole thing was raised to the negative third power. So first off, everything in here is going to be raised to the negative third power. 3 is going to be raised to negative third. X to the negative second is going to be raised to negative third. Y to the fifth is going to be raised to negative third. And z to the negative fourth is going to be raised to negative third. Now, I'm going to write it out like this, showing that this is going to be my 3 to the negative third. My x to the negative second was also to the negative third. My y to the fifth is to the negative third. And my z to the negative fourth is to the negative third. So again, each one of these 1, 2, 3, 4 different numbers or variables here are going to each be raised to the power of negative 3. Now, when I do this, let me just keep 3 to the negative third as is for a second. When I have this x to the negative second raised to the negative third, that's going to be this power to power, which means I'm going to multiply. So for that, I am going to get x to the positive 6. Now here, when I have this y to the fifth raised to the negative third, again, power to power, I'm going to multiply. And when I multiply that out, I'm going to get y to the negative 15th. And again, here, I'm going to have my z to the negative fourth raised to the negative third. and power to power, I'm going to multiply, and I'm going to end up with z to the positive 12th. So everything here was raised to the negative third. So my 3 to the negative third, I'm going to deal with that in a second. Here, power to power, I multiply, and this becomes a positive. Here, power to power, I multiply, this becomes a negative. And here, power to power, I multiply, and this becomes a positive. Now, we do not like to have negative exponents. So what's going to happen is I'm going to write a fraction, and anything that is a negative exponent is going to go in the denominator, and anything with a positive is going to stay in the numerator. So this, sorry, didn't mean to scribble. This one here is going to go in the denominator. This one here is going to go into the denominator because those are negative. Okay. The other two are positive. So these ones I'm doing in green. This is going to stay on top. This is going to stay on top. So I am going to have on top an x to the 6th and a z to the 12th. On bottom, I'm going to have, I'm just going to write it in black instead of yellow, 3 to the 3rd and a y to the 15th. Okay, so as I move them to the denominator, the exponents become the opposite sign. Now I'm going to clean up this answer. I'm going to have an x to the 6th, z to the 12th in my numerator. When I am looking at this 3 to the 3rd, 3 to the 3rd is 27 when I work that out, y to the 15th. And that is my final answer. Again, we do not want any negative exponents. So note, never want negative exponents. We want to always rewrite it with positive exponents. Okay, so next example. Let me just draw a line across this. And here too, just to kind of separate. Okay. So here, our next example. Let's say that in this case, I have 2 times x to the well, just 2 times x. How about that? Y to the negative 3rd, z to the 8th, and let's say that that whole quantity is raised to the power 3. And that's going to multiply with 3 x to the negative 4th, y to the 5th, z raised to the power 2. So I am going to have to raise everything in this first parenthesis by the power 3, and everything in the second parenthesis by the power 2. Okay, before I do anything else. So in my first one, I'm going to have 2 to the 3rd, and I'm going to clean these up in a second, x to the 3rd. I'm going to have negative, my y to the negative 3rd raised to the power 3. So here, when I have power to power, these are going to multiply, and I am going to get a negative 9. And then for my z, again, power to power is going to multiply, and I'm going to get z to the 24th. Okay. Now I am going to do the same idea over here. So my 3 to the 2nd, let me just write that out. We'll compute that here in a second. My x to the negative 4th raised to the power 2. So power to power, I'm going to multiply, and I'm going to get x to the negative 8th. my y to the 5th to the power 2, power to power, I multiply, and I'm going to get y to the 10th. And here my z is being squared, and that's going to be z squared. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use my laws of exponents, okay? So I'm going to be looking up here at when I'm multiplying the bases together, I add the exponents, okay? I combine the exponents. So the first thing I'm going to do is this 2 cubed is really just 8, okay? And this 3 squared is really going to be a 9. And then let me look at my x's with my x's, my y's with my y's, and my z's with my z's. So I'm just going to rewrite it here with my x to the 3rd times my x to the -8th, my y to the -9th times my y to the 10th, my z to the 24th times my z to the 2nd, okay? And you don't have to necessarily write it out like this. I just want you guys to understand that I'm going to be dealing with the numbers. So this was an 8 and a 9. Okay, so those are going to multiply. And that is going to give me a 72. Now, when I'm doing my x to the 3rd times x to the -8th, I'm going to take these exponents and I'm going to combine them. And so that's going to be 3 and a -8, which is going to be x to the -5th. My y, I have y to the -9th times y to the 10th. So I'm going to combine these, -9 and 10, make a 1. So y to the 1st, or even just y. That's what y to the 1st is. It's just y. And then here, I'm going to combine this. So 24 and 2, I'm going to get a z to the 26th. Now, I'm almost done. But again, I do not like to have negative exponents. So this negative exponent means that that is going to have to move to the denominator. So I'm going to have a 72 stay on the top. Y to the 1st, or I'm just going to write it as y. Z to the 26th stay on top. And this x to the -5th, okay, is going to come to the bottom. And now it's going to be a +5. So it was a -5. Now it's a +5. And that is going to be my final answer. And one more. Okay. So let's say as our next example, we have -5 x to the 0. Here, I'm going to make this a w to the 0. W to the 0, x to the -4th, y to the 10th, z to the -3rd, over, so divided by 20, w to the -1st, x to the 2nd, y to the -4th, and z to the -5th. First thing I want you guys to understand is I'm allowed to have a negative number, just not a negative exponent. So this 5 is not a negative exponent, okay? So that 5 is not a negative exponent, not a negative exponent, just a negative number, which I'm allowed to have, which is okay. Okay, I'm allowed to have that. The ones that I'm going to have issues with are the ones I'm going to do in pink. This is going to be an issue. 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 So what I'm going to do before I try to do my laws of exponents, let's put these where I want them to be so that they will be positive exponents. Okay. So My -5, let's keep temporarily. It's just a negative number. That's okay. My 20 is okay. Now on top, my w to the power 0 is okay. My y to the 10th is okay. I have issues with this x to the -4th, so I'm going to put that to the bottom and have it be a +4. This z to the -3rd, so I'm going to put it on bottom, and now it's going to be z to the +3rd. Okay, I already have my 20 from the bottom. Okay, 20 is going to stay where it was. This w to the -1st, okay, I'm going to move that. So let me just kind of do it in a different color. I'll do it in red. So these ones, so my w to the -1st, I'm going to move to the top. My x to the 2nd is going to stay. No issues with that. My y to the -4th, I'm going to move it, so it has to go on top, which means it's going to become positive now. And this z to the -5th, I'm going to move that, so it's going to go on top. So my x to the -4th got moved down. My z to the -3rd got moved down, and they became positive. Going the other direction, this y to the -1st moved to the top and became positive. This y to the -4th moved to the top. And this z to the -5th moved to the top, making them positive. Everything else stayed. W to the 0, y to the 10th stayed. My x to the 2nd stayed. Okay. So now I'm going to simplify this. So now when I'm simplifying this, when I'm looking at this -5/20, that is just a -5 divided by 20. That's going to be a -1/4 because 5 goes into 5 once, if you want to think about it this way, and 5 goes into 5 4 times. Okay. So I'm going to have a negative, I'm going to write 1 temporarily. Okay, but I don't need the 1. Now, this w to the power 0, anything to the power 0 is 1. So that's just a 1. Don't need to write it. Now let's look and see if I have any other w's. I have this w. So on top, I'm going to have a w to the 1st or just a w. If I'm looking at my y's, let's look at x's next. I have this x to the 4th and this x to the 2nd. They're both on the bottom. So when I have them both on bottom, my x to the 4th is going to multiply with my x to the 2nd, which means I'm actually going to add the exponents. Okay, I'm going to have 6 of them. Now, if I'm looking at my y's, I have a y to the 10th and a y to the 4th both on top. So on top, I'm going to have a total of y to the 14th. Now, if I'm looking at my z's, I have a z to the 5th on top and a z to the 3rd on bottom. So when I think about this, I think if I have 3 on bottom and 5 on top, the most I can cancel from top and bottom would be 3. I can get rid of these 3, and I can get rid of 3 from here. Now, when I get rid of 3 from here and 3 from here, I'm going to be left with 2 on the top. So I'm going to have a z to the 2nd on the top. Now, I can write that -1 in front, but I really don't need to have the -1 written in front of these coefficients, in front of these variables. So I can just have negative w, y to the 14th, z to the 2nd, over 4 x to the 6th. And that would be my final cleaned up answer. So now you're going to do a worksheet where you're going to practice doing all these laws of exponents. And if you need help, there will be a video that you can look at for guidance. Good luck.